If this episode proved anything, it's that hijinks are the most logical. Hello interwebs, I hope you are all doing well, and I am here to review yet another episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, this time episode 5, Spock Amok. And you can probably tell by the smile on my face that I have literally just finished watching this episode, and y'all, this one was just fun. That is the best way that I could describe this one, just absolutely joyously fun. This is the type of episode that I have been missing from modern Star Trek, outside of, I guess, Lower Decks and Prodigy, but from live action Star Trek. As much as I like Discovery and, find good things about Star Trek Picard, I have just missed the episodes where the characters just go and have some nonsense, silly fun for an episode. Episodes like Bride of Chaotica, or Trials and Tribulations, or The Troubles with Tribbles, back in the original series. Like, those are just episodes that aren't, really serious or heavy or supposed to have this big emotional message, but are just, the characters going off and just having a fun time for an hour. And that's what this is. These episodes just get us moments to just have fun with these characters, get it to see them in a less high-stakes situation, and just get to know them, who they are as people in just casual everyday situations. Again, it's something that I think is really missing from Discovery, and I was so glad to see this here, especially coming off of last episode with the Gorn attack. That entire episode was just incredibly serious front to back, and so for this one to just come off of that, and even directly dealing with that, they directly reference last episode in this one, that the Enterprise is getting repairs from last episode. It's a nice tonal break from the more serious episode that we got last week, and even not that the episodes before this were super serious, but taking the tone up a little bit and just having some fun with these characters, and I really enjoyed it on every single level. The other thing too that I loved about this is that it managed to do all that fun stuff, and you can tell by the title alone that this is a Spock episode, and directly one dealing with some of the stuff we saw in the pilot with T'Pring, and even kind of leading into subtly to what we see in the episode Amok Time in the original series, because we do know from that episode, spoilers if you haven't seen the original series, a 60-year-old show at this point, but what we know from that show is that T'Pring and Spock's relationship does fall apart. And I do remember, as I said in the pilot, that I had reservations about this storyline with Spock, not just in terms of the relationship with T'Pring, but I thought, I'm not entirely sure how much I love the, super sexual Spock, because I liked him feeling a little bit more distance from Vulcan culture than we see in the pilot. And here, the episode directly addresses that. And while it's still very much like Spock and T'Pring in a relationship, I like that it is really wrestling with Spock's relationship to her, but also his Vulcan and human side, and showing it in kind of a fun, cheesy 1960s way that I won't spoil, because part of the fun is getting the episode and you're like, oh, this is what they're doing? This is what they're doing. But it's very cheesy, over-the-top ridiculousness nonsense that I love to see it. It was great for me. It won't be for everybody, but I love the cheesiness of it. But it's dealing with an actual character exploration of Spock, and I like that the episode doesn't end, because one of the mistakes I think that prequels make, right, is that they pick a point in the thing that they're a prequel to, like the original series, and they try to make an episode about that, and they sort of bring the character right up to where he would be in that episode, but then you have the rest of the series to go through. I've seen many prequels do that sort of thing of finish the character's arc and then just end up having to repeat it because they're the prequel trying to address that place in the character without realizing you have time to get there. And this episode really, I think, does that. It doesn't bring us to where Spock is at in Amok Time in the original series, but actually takes us in a different direction, but sort of hints at those moments as well, but doesn't, beat you over the head with, foreshadowing it. It ends this arc within this episode. And I just really enjoyed that. It was just a manages to address, the wibbly-wobbliness of life, that sometimes you go back and forth on your relationships to different things, to people, to cultures, to your place in society in different ways. And I thought that was just very fun. We'll have to see how they eventually play with it over the course of the next season or years that this show is on the air, but as it stands, this was just fun in that regard. But the other two characters that I really loved, probably most of all in this episode, were Chapel, La'an, and Una. The three of them in different ways, but La'an and Una sort of in their own way, and Chapel in hers, really get a lot of fun stuff to do throughout this. It was just, especially Una and La'an, the scenes with them were just sheer delight, ending in a scene that just really evoked Star Trek to me, and we'll talk about it in the spoiler-filled section. And then also we do get some fun stuff here as well with Pike doing some negotiation stuff that also evoked very Star Trekian values and beliefs of caring for others and having empathy for others. And I just really loved it. It just, this whole episode on every level just had me beaming from ear to ear. No pun intended to Mr. Spock. With just how much I loved it. It was just fun. But with all that being said, let me get into spoilers, because I have so many thoughts, and I'm just gonna be just so joyous with you, because let's just get into it. Y'all, now that we're in spoilers, we got a body swap episode. Like, oh, I love it. I love it. It's cheesy, silly nonsense, and it's even done with Vulcan Katras. I loved it. It's just so much fun. Let's go through the episode and just sort of talk about stuff. I'll touch upon different storylines. We start off the episode with a really great scene of Spock's dream, where he's sort of imagining himself fighting his Vulcan and human sides in the set that looks very much like the Vulcan set from Amok Time. Like, they did a great job, like, recreating that set for this scene. Like, really wonderful done on the production angle of that to, like, recreate Amok Time set. But it starts you off thinking about, like, Spock's relationship to his human and Vulcan sides, and always having to live up to Vulcan culture and never feeling like he's wanted enough. And, like, at the end of the episode, we also get this moment where he says, like, any deviation from Vulcan culture was seen as a proof that he wasn't Vulcan enough. But here in Starfleet, he can be his full self, and I like that being the arc that he goes on and sort of understanding his distanciation from Vulcan culture. It was a good starting place with this scene, and I like the resolution as it goes through. I know I'm jumping ahead, but I like the arc of that, and so why he loves Starfleet so much. But then also feeling like he's distanced from T'Pring, because now he's getting some time to spend with her in this episode, and feeling like he's in this world between wanting to live up to being with her, but also having his duty with Starfleet, and sort of that conflicting sort of thing that she doesn't really understand, but also has a right to feel that she's being ignored for his duties. And so I like that everyone's sort of understandable in this. It would be very easy to frame T'Pring as the unreasonable one, especially where we see her character in Amok Time, where in that episode she's very much played as like the femme fatale, evil, sort of conniving woman in that episode, and I like that they're not playing that angle in this show, that she is an understandable person. And clearly we'll see a falling out with them, I'm sure, over the course of the next seasons of the show, but if we get many more of them. But I like that she's not shown as unreasonable in the sort of, you know, not the worst depiction of it, but it's a little bit of playing into a sort of sexist trope with the character in the original series. Again, not the worst version of it. I'm not hating on it all that much, but it is there. But then we get some fun little scenes between Ortegas, Chapel, and Mbenga as they go off to R&R on Starbase 1. And I just love, like, the familiarity they have with each other. Like, Mbenga just loving fly fishing. I love the, like, big thing that we get to see with him later on fly fishing, which was really sweet and wonderful. But also the familiarity with Ortegas and Chapel. Also, I think there's a hint there that Chapel is bisexual. She clearly likes guys, but there's a reference that I think she said she was with a girl. I don't know. We don't know the full situation, but if Chapel's bisexual, oh, I'm so here for that, just because I'm already identifying heavily with Chapel. She's probably one of my favorite characters so far in the show, and I'm bisexual, so I would personally love that. Doesn't need to be the case, but it would be cool to see that, to get her to show that she's bisexual. But I also like that she likes casual relationships, that she doesn't like being in committed things, and that's sort of what leads her to be interested in Spock. As we see throughout the episode, she starts to learn a little bit more about him as a person, as we sort of evoke her going into the original series as well, of her having feelings for Spock like we see in that show. So I like that they're subtly sort of going for that, sort of building off the flirting that we saw with her doing in episode 2. And she just seems like she flirts with everybody. And her like running away from the guy who's like, oh, I think you're interesting. I think we should make this more committed. And she like instantly runs away to go be with Spock in that scene. Understand that character. I am curious to see, if for those of you who don't know, in the original series, one of the early episodes of that show that we learn is that Chapel has a fiancé named Corby. And I believe in that episode, she said that she joined Starfleet for him.
I understand you gave up a career in bioresearch to sign aboard a starship.
I know he's alive down there, Captain.
Ask Scanner to bridge. Status report green. Engineering control. It's been 5 years since his last message.
Roger's a very determined man. He'd find a way to live.
And I'm sure they're retconning that. So they're just completely ignoring that part of canon, which makes sense to me. I'm totally fine with them retconning that Chapel joined Starfleet just for a dude. Totally fine with that. But I am curious if they are going to lean into Roger Corby at some point in the series, if we're going to see him or meet him. He's not referenced here, but I am curious if that's going to come up at any point. We'll see if that comes on the pike. That episode was not great with his character, but we're curious to see if they do bring that up. But then we also learn that Pike is going through negotiations, and Pike is wearing the green Kirk shirt that I love to see. He's like, oh, be still my cosplay heart. And he learns that there's these negotiations with these people that they're trying to get access to the territory because it's at a specific spot between the Klingons and Romulans. And also, we got a reference to the Klingon War here earlier, which I like to see as well, that we're not ignoring the events of Discovery in that sense. So a nice little reference there. But I also like that we get to see that these aliens change their personalities based on who they're with. And initially it was like, oh, they're empathetic. That was my guess, that they changed their personality to be with Vulcans, with humans, with Tellarites. And I thought that was like just part of their species. But it was actually a negotiation tactic, that they always empathize with other people's point of view in order to try and get them to do the same for them. Like radical empathy. It's honestly something that I try to do sometimes on this channel where maybe I fail, or at least on my other channel, my video essay channel. It's try to radically empathize with others in hopes that people can radically empathize with me as like a trans person, other issues that I talk about. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but it spoke to me. And I like that at the end of all of this, partially he's able to speak to T'Pring in Spock's body and sort of share with her how important Spock is to Starfleet and how he lives up to those ideals. And I loved learning and seeing that. But then also at the end, he sort of evokes that same sort of idea with them, and he sees everything from their point of view, and that's what allows them to want to join the Federation, or at least make a treaty with the Federation in a really beautiful solar sail moment. Very, very beautiful, and all of those story beats were really wonderful in all of that. And I like just seeing them being agreeable with Pike at the beginning, with like changing, like, oh, Chris, it's great to see you. Great. Also good to see Robert April back. It's nice to see, he looks like he's going to be like the Admiral Ross, Admiral Nechayev, sort of character, the recurring Admiral character that we get in different Star Trek shows. So it looks like he's going to play that role here, and I like his familiarity with Pike again. So nice to see Robert April showing back up. But then I've already sort of touched upon it, but the Spock and T'Pring scenes where they switch bodies to understand each other, so great. Both actors play it wonderfully. I love when Pike enters the room. They do have subtle differences in their mannerisms, like T'Pring in Spock's body is sort of holding herself rigidly straight, and Ethan Peck is sort of like got his hands like this. He's speaking with a softer voice, but it's like very subtle. And I just like their back and forth with Pike, and they sort of tell him eventually, and he's like, no, you notice some slight mannerisms, and yes, you can. But it's not like so big, they're not over the top, like they're still both clearly Vulcan, and it's just like the subtle like acting stuff like that, just so great. Both actors, I sadly don't know the actress who plays T'Pring's name off the top of my head, but both her and Ethan Peck, great job with all of that, just around the board, just showcasing how wonderful they were. And then also getting to see Spock and T'Pring's body go to chapel to help negotiate with this dude, and showcasing a little bit of his human side by punching the dude in the face for being a racist asshole. And so I liked that, like Spock showcasing a little bit more of his human side and getting to be his full self in T'Pring's body. Also, I am sure if this episode's anything like the body swap episodes for me as a kid, this episode may be a little bit of a trans egg cracking episode. I remember back when I was a kid, I watched the old Scooby-Doo movie, the first live action one where they all switch bodies, and that was definitely an egg cracking moment for me as a little trans kid. So I'm sure some little trans kid is getting their egg cracked by this episode, so that's kind of fun to see. I always enjoy body swap episodes in that sense. But also the back and forth between Spock and T'Pring was just the whole wonderful throughout the whole episode, and like the subtle uncomfortability I'm sure Spock must feel at T'Pring's words when she comes into his room and says, oh, this room feels very human, and he's like, oh, I'm redecorating, and you could see that he was like putting everything in place so hopefully she would like it, and she moves things around and not liking the small adjustments, and you sort of like see that kind of bothers him. But the nice moments was like, I will reserve my criticism until you redecorate. Again, like subtle digs at him that I don't think are intentional on her part, but I could see how Spock takes that as hurtful. And so I just like seeing those little moments, and then eventually them coming to an understanding with each other, and also getting to swap back through Benga's sort of like weird Katra sort of shifting stuff. And I love Chapel's like, oh, they're gonna nerve pinch us for this, aren't they? And then screaming and being back in each other's bodies. And also just T'Pring saying it was logical that you punched him, because having met him, it was logical to punch the guy that Spock punched in the face in T'Pring's body. Also really good. So getting to see each other's point of view, that's what a good body swap episode does. Nothing super special, but just well done and well written, and the actors did a great job and fun there. But this brings me to my favorite storyline of the episode that I haven't really touched upon yet because I wanted to save it for the end. Everything with La'an and Una was great. Like them learning that the nickname for them is like where fun goes to die, and Lieutenant Kyle being like, oh no, I don't know what you're talking about. And them like having to like wrestle with that. And I love that La'an's like, I just love staying here on the warp core, just loving the warp core, just like my boy Boimler over on the lower decks. Like I felt like a little lower decks reference there with that, but it was really adorable.
Come on, there should be somewhere you'd love to be.
Computer, show us the warp core.
Wow, amazing. What an impressive feat of engineering. And them catching these ensigns and them being like good cop and bad cop together was hysterical. And like cuts to Lon being like, what did you do? And then like Una being like, oh, it's very nice, it's great, you're just good. It's just wonderful back and forth there. But then them playing Enterprise Bingo, so creative and fun. If you look at the list, I won't read all of them, but there's some fun things on that list. They had like sneak a tribble on board and stuff like that. But my favorite one is when they like re-energize themselves with the transporter to re-get gum taste again. It's so dumb and wonderful. I love it. And them just shooting each other with the stun, like, ow, that hurt. Like, all of that was just great. But then them ultimately, at the end of the day, like, finding a way to break the rules, because they make the rules by going out on the hull of Enterprise and using the force fields to stay breathing out there. I think that was a little bit of cute. It was very cute to see that. Like, I know they're risking their lives, but what's a little fun with that? A little bit of life risking. And they signed the name on the hull of the Enterprise, which was also like a nice little evocation of Enterprise history. I like that being like sort of a tradition on the Enterprise, that everyone sort of signs it for good luck, and it just stays on board the ship. I wonder if it's there by the time we get to the refit Enterprise in Star Trek: The Motion Picture. Would be nice to if we ever learn that. I doubt we will, but because you can't change the original series or the motion picture. But cute. It was very cute. And then the moment where the solar sailor goes overhead was also really beautiful. The VFX team doing a phenomenal job as always with this show and all the other Trek shows. But really a beautiful, wonderful moment of just inspiring like cuteness. And again, we end on Chapel sort of evoking like her possible feelings for Spock over possibly the next few seasons of the show. Overall, like I said, nothing too serious here. Just a fun 45 minutes that explores Spock's character and his relationship to Pring and Vulcan culture, showing how competent Pike is, and then just some fun, silly hijinks, logical hijinks throughout the episode. Just fun. Just fun. And like I said, as much as I love Discovery, and things like that, I feel like this is what's been missing from a lot of Star Trek shows for me, other than like Lower Decks. Prodigy has these too, but so far, but this one especially, in live action Star Trek, I've missed just nonsense, fun episodes of Trek, and this one gave it to me. Before I go, I do wish to let everyone know though that, next week, I am having surgery on my face, so I will hopefully still be reviewing next week's episode. I might even, depending on when the screener comes in, because I might get a screener for it before I have surgery, so maybe it'll be the week after that I'll be out, but next week or possibly the week after, depending on when I get screeners and stuff, I may not be on camera filming the review, and it might also be a little bit late. I will still definitely do it, but it just might not be on camera, and it might be a little bit later than normal, just because I'll be recovering. So I do want to still talk about it. I'll be very excited about it, but depending on how I'm feeling, might be a few days, or audio only, or both. So just be aware of that. Just want to give a heads up on that front. But beyond all that, thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoy my reviews. Stay safe out there. Don't forget to subscribe for this review and more reviews and other things on this channel. My other channel, Jessie Gender, Patreon, support me at. I have a podcast called Jumpgate. Do Babylon 5 stuff on that, so check that out. Beyond all of that, I hope that you, as always, my friends, live long and prosper.